criminality that affect the country's social stability. Starting this Wednesday, workers of the transportation sector, merchants, and union groups joined the strike to demand measures against crime, which affects entrepreneurs of all sectors. Those mobilized reject the crime law promoted by Boluarte's administration, which favors delinquency, and the urban terrorism law. In the last year, 17,000 complaints of extortion and 2,000 cases of homicide were registered at national level without receiving any attention from the authorities.
In La Guajira, Colombia, the effects of the winter wave hit the Colombian department and conditions worsen. This winter wave especially affects the High Guajira, where the inhabitants remain cut off from communication. In the last few days, there has been a rise in the price of foodstuffs, as many vehicles carrying food and fuel were trapped on the roads due to the poor conditions of the roads and could take up to 6 days to arrive. Moreover, the municipality of Uribia declared a public calamity due to the rains and the overflowing of the Cutanamana and Chemerrein creeks, which affected more than 300 families. The Mexican president praised the quality and dedication of the Mexican workers in the United States and how this country benefits from their outstanding working results.
It is important to demonstrate with facts the benefits for the United States of the work our brothers and sisters are doing there, but also the work of the Mexicans, men and women who are there, which is first class. Our construction workers, and those from other fields, from doctors to construction workers, which are all equally important. And also the importance of integration, because you have to remember that Mexican exports to the United States have increased. Much of that export is, for example, auto parts, which allow the auto industry in the United States to benefit from our treaty.
The head of state also praised the administration of former President Andrés Manuel López Obrador and highlighted his efforts to achieve a national transformation in Mexico.
For us and for the Mexican people, President López Obrador is a man who dedicated his life to the transformation of our country. I said it when I took office, he is the main political leader of the 21st century, at least, and the man who led the transformation of our country. I think he has not retired from public life. And our adversaries are already listening to why I say this. Because he is still fighting, but from another trench. Because to sit down to write a book about the cultural greatness of Mexico, which is based, among other sources of wealth, on our native peoples, is just like to continue fighting from another trench, because once his book is published, it will become a very important source for the historical memory and the recognition of the greatness of Mexico. So from here we send him our greetings, and let's hope someone passes the message on to him.
A new wave of violence generated by armed criminal groups spread through Haiti on Monday amid great political instability that culminated in the replacement of Prime Minister Gary Conille. See the details in the following report by our colleague Charlotte Dafoe.
Empty streets, silent schools, closed stores, Port-au-Prince residents woke up on Monday with the warning to stay at home, as gunfire began to reverberate in several neighborhoods of the city. In the afternoon, a Spirit Airlines commercial flight was hit by gunfire and had to divert its route, which led to the suspension of air traffic over the capital. This explosion of violence occurred on the day of the nomination of the new Prime Minister, Alex Didier Filzame. In his first speech, Filzame stressed the urgency of resolving the problems of insecurity and freedom of movement in the country.
Le premier chantier incontournable et qui conditionne la réussite de la transition.
The first essential task that will determine the success of the transition is to reestablish the security of people, property and infrastructure, food security, and freedom of movement throughout the country.
The United Nations, for their part, called on the country's political forces to overcome their differences and move towards the restoration of order. They also called on member states to collaborate with security operations on the island.
First remains a critical to that end. The Secretary General appeals to all member states to sustain and increase their security support for Haiti, including through multinational security support mission, ensuring that it receives the financial support it needs to successfully implement its mandate and expand deployment and operations. Latest political developments, the Secretary General urges all Haitian stakeholders to work constructively together to advance the political transition as agreed upon on March 11th in Jamaica. A third and a half of armed gang members are children under the age of 18.
According to the UN, armed gangs now control up to 85% of the capital, imposing a climate of terror on the population and making the country's democratic transition impossible.
The Lebanese resistance movement Hezbollah attacked for the first time the headquarters of the Ministry of War and General Staff of the Zionist regime of Israel. Through a communique, the Lebanese resistance reported that the airstrike was carried out with a group of armed drones against the Kirja based in Tel Aviv. In that sense, Hezbollah pointed out that the attack was in response to the Israeli aggressions against Beirut and the criminal actions against the people of Gaza. The Hezbollah resistance group continues to carry out actions against Israeli soldiers and armored vehicles. The United Nations Office of Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs in Syria denounced the worsening humanitarian situation in the country. According to the organization, Syria is facing a funding shortfall, which has worsened the humanitarian crisis. They also detailed that currently 16.7 million Syrian citizens need assistance to survive, as well as at least 510,000 Lebanese, Palestinians, and Syrians who fled from Lebanon to that country. On the other hand, they clarified that currently only 27.5% of the $4.70 billion in humanitarian response plan for Syria has been funded, and urged the donor community to significantly increase its support for the humanitarian response in the nation.
Peru workers launched a 72-hour national strike against Dina Boluarte's government due to high levels of criminality that affect the country's social stability. Starting this Wednesday, workers of the transportation sector, merchants, and union groups joined the strike to demand measures against crime, which affects entrepreneurs of all sectors. Those mobilized reject the crime law promoted by Boluarte